Good afternoon, FaceTime fam. Welcome back to another episode of Incoming FaceTime from Suhani. Today is September 13th at 3 p.m., and today is our first episode of the Fine Line series. Today, I would like to introduce my beautiful co-host, Bareen Siddique. Bareen, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
What's up, FaceTime fam? My name is bareen, siddique. I'm a sophomore at reedy. Some of fun facts about me: I do choir. I'm a social officer, and I do enjoy singing. Part of a pop a cappella group, and I own a couple clubs at reedy. So yeah.
I actually met Bareen through like a mentorship, like a mentee group type thing that we had going on, and she's my soul sister. And so I thought, there is no better choice than to have Bareen as my co-host today. So today's fine line episode is we're going to be talking about the fine line between speaking your mind versus being rude, right? And I feel like this is such a fine line because I understand wanting, obviously, like being honest and like in a high school environment, but like things can get spicy pretty fast. So we're going to be discussing the fine line between all of that. So before I do start my podcast, I always do a small like pre-conversation with everyone I interview. So Breen actually said something really interesting that I'd want to mention, but she was like, Suhani, this specific like episode topic got me, and it was so interesting to me because I thought that growing up I was destined to be bullied. And I was like, what does that even mean? And I'm just gonna let her tell you about it because I thought it was so funny.
I know that sounds a little bit morbid. I'm not gonna lie, but growing up, I mean, if you can't tell, I'm brown. I grew up brown. I grew up extroverted. I grew up chubby, and I grew up all these things that society told me that I shouldn't be, especially in America. And so, growing up, I kind of developed the mindset that I'm destined to be bullied, and that sounds so sad, but it's just the truth, and it's something that a lot of girls experience or may feel sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I think.
So that is a lot. And again, obviously, guys, like, especially in high school, like you meet all these new people, all these new experiences, all these new opinions, people. So these topics really do arise all the time. And so, you know what? Let's just get into it. We're glad you're here. So the first thing is we're going to talk about three different things on the topic of the fine line between speaking your mind versus just being rude. And I think the very first thing when me and Breen were talking was just the basic concept of empathy, right? Right. And so you may have heard like the popular thing that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. So Breen, what are your like thoughts on that quote specifically? Like what comes to your mind when you hear
Yeah, I feel like in different contexts that quote fits, but the truth is that empathy and being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, especially when talking to someone about something that's personal to you, is so important, and I can't stress that enough. There have been so many times, especially in high school, we're all learning to develop our social skills and talking to one another, and we kind of, there's that lack of connection there, and kind of not empathizing with people and not being able to sympathize and be like, well, I understand where you're coming from. And when it comes to differentiating between being rude and being you have to have empathy when conducting both.
That was a bar. She worded that so beautifully. For my opinion, the quote, sticks and stones may break my bones, words will never hurt. I think that is a very good message to have, quite frankly, but I will say that there's so much discrepancy in it because it really isn't entirely true. Words do mean more than you think they do. And I'm a big advocate that the way you make someone feel says everything, right? If you're putting in good energy into the world, and you know what, like I'm a very religious but also spiritual person, and any religion you'll find in any like self-help book, all the things, it's like the energy that you put into the world will come back to you.
Intention, kind of. Yeah, the intention you put everywhere.
Yeah. And so like I think the fine line between speaking your mind versus just being rude, it's like if you voice this opinion or you voice this thought you have, will it ultimately hurt someone, but at the same time, like, but also it's like tough love, so like how do you think we would differentiate from like tough love and just like speaking your mind? Like how do you, even if you are a tough love person, I know so many people who are like tough love, but it's like how can we soften that impact, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's all about the person you're talking to, right? If you know the person well enough and you understand that yeah, when you know someone, you have to understand where they're coming from, what's their background. If you know that they grew up in an area that, or grew up with a family that kind of insulted them a lot, and they are a little sensitive, then being able to customize your words to fit someone, and that shows how much you care. And I think that's really important. I also think that if someone grows up in a rough environment and they're just used to taking humor, a slap on the back, pat on the back, it's nothing to them, then being able to reach someone where they're at, and with differentiating personalities are so important. What do you think?
I agree with that. That actually brings me to my second point of our discussion is that for some people, finding the fine line between being rude versus speaking your mind is that for some people, that line looks different. Sometimes it's thinner for others, it's thicker for others. But, and then I was talking to Bareen about it, and actually, Bareen's from Brooklyn. So could you tell us, like, I've grown up in like southern for like Frisco, like Texas, my whole life, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, like they say like Southern hospitality. I don't know if you've heard of that's like a thing. So like tell us for you, like for you, like what is Brooklyn like what makes that different? And it was like coming here like a culture shock, like what was it?
So yeah, I think it's a big difference between the North and the South in general. I grew up like I said, being bullied. Brooklyn, like everyone's an immigrant. Everyone comes from somewhere, so we're all able to take a little slap on the back. A little thick skin. You have to adjust. That's just how Brooklyn is, right? Everyone's going through something, and I guess it kind of contrasts with that Southern sickly sweet, like very polite up front to your face, like you know I'm not used to backhanded insults or like backhanded like people saying backhanded things to me. In Brooklyn, if someone had an issue with me, let's talk it out right now. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a very big contrasting thing from being from Brooklyn and now living in Dallas and kind of suburban area compared to urban area. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that. And the thing that you said, like, if someone has an issue with you, like, it's like straight up, it's like, tell me. But that's the thing. Like, if you have an issue with someone, you can speak your mind about it without being rude about it. And I feel like that's one thing that obviously, like, as we're high schoolers, we're navigating the social circle, we're navigating our social skills. That's something we are all honestly still actively trying to learn. So that's cool. Our last point that I want to bring up is that Breen actually brought this up, and it was a topic of self-respect during this thing, and she worded it so beautifully. I'm just gonna let her take over for this one.
Yeah. So for self-respect, yeah, self-respect is such a huge thing to me, and I think having dignity and holding yourself with that poise and that dignity and understanding yourself when things are not good for you, when things are good for you, is so important. And when I mean self-respect, I don't just mean respecting yourself, but respecting the dignity of others, right? Like understanding that you have your certain limits and things that you can talk about, and you understanding that I have certain things that I want to talk about or I don't want to talk about. That is so important when it comes to communication and just getting to know people, right? Especially when we're in high school, it's kind of hard to always think about someone else and there's so much things going on to you. You know what I mean? But being able to just take a second, like breathe, let me think what's happening with you, what's happening with me, and then communicating based off of that is so crucial. And it's honestly something we kind of lack nowadays. Why don't you agree?
I would agree, but the old another thing is that like you said, like we're all practicing this in high school with our social skills, like especially like leadership in clubs, for example. Like let's put it into a situation like when you want to practice this skill actually like in you're like a leader in a club, right? It's important to lead with a good heart because not only are you setting like an example for what underclassmen and like the other members of your club, right? You want to lead with a good heart. You want to be nice, you want to be kind, you're like like you want people to think of your like a lot of the clubs I'm in. I remember when I was an underclassman, like those clubs generally felt like a safe space for me, right? Because like the officers were kind, the presidents were kind, and like that's just important. And I feel like the impact that you leave on people is so important. Literally, like the seniors when I was a freshman, I still remember them. I still remember like the impact they made on me, like how kind they were, and I still keep in touch with so many of them, right? And so I'm going a little off topic, but like that's what I mean. I think it's really good that like this skill is so important to practice to lead with kindness. And really, yeah, really this entire speaking your mind versus being rude, it all just boils down to being kind. And it's like you can fully speak your mind without being rude about it. And yes, it's a social skill we're all going to practice, but we're all going to get so good at it. So now let's talk about it. Like I've been talking about like speaking your mind versus being rude. We like kind of differentiated the fine line between it. So how do we actually practice it? Let's say like I want to speak my mind and I want to stand up for myself or stand up for a friend. How do I do that? How do I put a nice, clear, hard boundary without, disrespecting? Yeah. How do you think? What's your thoughts on that? How do you do
Yeah.
that?
Well, first, take a step back. Like nothing good comes out of having heightened emotions and then making decisions off of having heightened emotions. I think taking a step back, reflecting and assessing the situation, right? You can't help something if you don't know anything about it, right? I think you know, when you're in a moment of tension, just to see both perspectives, and although that may be difficult sometimes, it's the best thing you can do to kind of think of a solution, right? Seeing both perspectives and then basing your opinion off of that, and being able to understand where your biases lie and correct them. And I think that's really important when you're differentiating between speaking your mind and being rude. Your biases, that plays a huge role in speaking your mind or being rude. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think no matter what, I feel like I want to end this episode by saying let's all be kind, let's all be nice. And you know what? High school is a really tough environment to navigate. It really is. She's a sophomore, I'm a senior. Like you can both see like it's an underclassman senior. Like there's so much dynamic, right? And like every time I talk to Bareen, like I feel like yeah, like I get it. Like I get it. I have so much fun with Marine, guys. I can't even. Okay. But yeah, that's the conclusion of our first Fine Line episode. Just to recap, we discussed the fine line between speaking your mind versus just being plain rude. There's three things that we touched on. One is that sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt. Has some merit, but not really. It's really important to be empathetic and kind to all situations because you really never know what someone's going through. Second thing is self-respect. It's really important to, when you are like trying to voice your thing, is that being rude is when you're disrespecting both parties. It's a lose-lose situation, and you should never let your emotions get in the way of your own dignity. And the last thing, for some people, this boundary is different. Some people have thicker skin and some people get a little more hurt, and that's okay. That doesn't make one right, one wrong. It's just important to practice kindness and empathy and a little bit of sensitivity everywhere you go. Brain, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think a word that you should take home with you today is nuance. Nuance is important. Connotation is important. Your feelings are also important, and voicing your opinions are also important. I think it's also important that you understand that sometimes things will go your way. Sometimes things will go your way, and that's life. Life, and all you can do is walk through it through kindness, walk through it with empathy, walk through it with compassion, because you're only here for so long. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
This is Incoming FaceTime from Suhani. My name is Suhani Gupta, your host. This is my co-host, Bareen Siddique, and we'll be signing off our first Fine Line episode today. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, comment, and share. Let me know your thoughts. And if you'd love to be a part of the Fine Line series, please schedule an appointment with me using my Zoom scheduler in my Instagram bio today. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe. YOLO. Bye-bye.